For many people, the day will come when they will have to consider alternate housing choices. Perhaps they will downsize, and in so doing they may consider an assisted living facility as their ability to independently care for themselves diminishes. So what are the options for older people who can no longer live on their own? Do places exist that are more like a home and less like an institution? Do such places provide more autonomy, choices, and peace of mind for their residents? Is assisted living an alternative to nursing home care, or is it simply an intermediate step in the elder care process? Can assisted living be given on a temporary basis? What should families know about the assisted living admission process? Do assisted living facilities have rules and regulations? What are the sources of payment for assisted living facilities? Given the advances in medicine, should families engage in advanced planning to prepare for age-related infirmities? Hello, my name is Attorney Ramsey Bahrawy, and welcome to Your Money, Your Life. In this segment, we will be discussing the senior care services available from assisted living facilities in Massachusetts. To assist me in this discussion, I've invited Ben Boulter of Methuen Village in Methuen, Massachusetts. Ben, welcome to Your Money, Your Life. It's great to have you on the program.
Thank you, Ramsey.
Okay, well, let's start with the obvious question. What is assisted living, and why should people consider it?
Well, assisted living is a community where people choose to move to that community because they have a need. Mm-hmm. And that need could vary anywhere from more social stimulation or perhaps an increased need in care provided by caregivers. And each person that decides to make that choice, it's very much an individualized and personalized decision.
What does assisted living do for someone who decides to become a resident in one of these facilities?
Mm-hmm. Well, when someone has interest in moving into assisted living, there's usually some need that's happened at home. And they're saying to themselves, you know what, I need to start considering a different living arrangement. Mm-hmm. So a nurse would go assess that person and say, okay, where would they benefit from assisted living? So the needs are various, you know, and certainly there are many, many factors that go into making that decision.
Okay. Now, I've read that assisted living facilities provide assistance to their residents with regards to what is referred to as activities of daily living. What are activities of daily living?
Activities of daily living would include things such as bathing, grooming, dressing, mm-hmm. Mobility. All those things that we kind of take for granted each day. Mm-hmm. Just getting up in the morning, getting out of bed, going to brush your teeth, taking a shower. All those little things. So, and again, those can vary as well. Some people may be fine with their mobility. Mm-hmm. They may need some simple reminders for taking medications. And of course, dementia plays into that as well. The effect dementia would have on a resident's ability to do those things would vary as well.
Okay. You mentioned dementia. Do all assisted living facilities accommodate dementia patients, or only some?
It depends on the community.
Okay.
Some communities have what we just call traditional assisted living without a secured unit. Other communities have a specific program that's safe and secure within the community that tailors to those that have dementia or Alzheimer's or another type of memory impairment mm-hmm. that really requires them to be in a setting where the doors are secure. And you have residents who live in assisted living, the traditional side, that do very well with some levels of dementia. It really comes down to making sure that the community has done a good, safe assessment to make sure that they be appropriate for one or the other.
Okay, so it's a safety issue, is that what you're saying?
Usually a life safety concern.
You said some facilities have dementia units. Are there additional services that are provided to dementia patients versus other types of residents?
There are. I would say it's really a question of how many more staff are available for those residents. Mm-hmm. So the services are provided both on the traditional side and the side that's secure. The services are very much the same, mm-hmm. although continence needs would be more prevalent in a secure program. Mm-hmm. Medication management, laundry services. It's just much more intensive with the staff that help those residents.
Okay. Now, in a traditional type of setting, does an assisted living facility, above and beyond any of the assistance that we mentioned with regards to activities of daily living, does the facility provide any sort of medical care?
The community can, although the community would typically not do anything that's skilled care. The nurse that would be working in the program would really look at the resident from a preemptive and holistic standpoint. Typically, we would see someone who has a urinary tract infection. That isn't usually diagnosed immediately. There's certain behaviors a resident may exhibit, so we may say, okay, it's time to do a test for that. Let's see if that's what they're actually suffering from. You would typically employ a visiting nurse from an agency to come into the community to provide some of those services. But usually if it's direct skilled needs that typically a nursing home would provide, you wouldn't typically see that in assisted living.
Now, as you know, I'm an elder law attorney, and sometimes in talking with people, I'll hear the following, and I was wondering if you'd comment on it. I'll hear people talking about, well, we're going to need some help. Maybe we can get some in-home care, or maybe we'd look at assisted living, but we'd rather not look at assisted living because the next step is the nursing home. Is that a reasonable position for someone to take? Not
necessarily. Assisted living in each state is regulated differently. Specifically in Massachusetts, though, you can bring the visiting nurse, you can bring hospice in, you can hire your own direct one-to-one agency to come provide help. In some communities, there's not typically a medical director, but there is typically a doctor who has an affiliation with the community, whose nurse practitioner may come visit weekly. That in itself would help eliminate doctor appointments off-site.
Okay, so it's then fair to say that really the nursing home is not necessarily the next step?
Not always.
Okay. All right.
Only once all options have been exhausted.
Okay. Is it fair to say that somebody who goes into assisted living can no longer safely live independently in their own home? Is that a fair statement to make?
It depends on the person.
Okay.
Certainly sometimes that choice is made because it has to be made. The doctor or another social service provider may say it's unsafe for this person to live at home alone anymore. But no one's going to force the resident to do anything. It's truly the resident's choice to decide, I'm going to move to assisted living. But some residents will still choose to say, you know what, I'm still going to stay and live at home until there's an event perhaps down the road that motivates them to make that decision. On the other hand, some residents come strictly for the socialization. They're independent, they drive, they still golf, they go out in the evening, but they're there for family and friends.
They have a place that's making dinner for them?
3 meals a day,
3 meals
weekly
a day.
housekeeping, weekly laundry.
Housekeeping, I mean, there are a lot of conveniences, aren't there?
Many.
Yeah.
Almost like being on a cruise.
You've
got a nurse on.
Nice?
Pretty much. I mean, it's really the concept of assisted living has come so far in the last 20 or 30 years. It really isn't, for the most part, an all-inclusive concept where all those little things are accounted for. So.
Now, from your experience, do you find that families sort of like plan ahead for assisted living, or is it more of a crisis type of situation where all of a sudden there's a family crisis and they need an assisted living tomorrow, let's say?
It also varies. We've seen both.
Okay.
We see people touring today that aren't ready for 2 or 3 more years, but we do typically get calls from the emergency room or from a local rehab or nursing community saying this person can no longer go home. Now,
can assisted living be utilized on a temporary basis, or is it only for people who are going to live there on a permanent basis?
Most agreements are quite flexible.
Okay.
They typically consist of a year residency agreement with a notice period to get out of that agreement with 30 or 60 days. Although at many communities you can also sign a respite agreement, which could be as short as a month or 2.
So the answer is some people actually will use assisted living on a more temporary basis. You referred to that as respite, and then others will be permanent. The relationship between the resident and the assisted living facility, is that a landlord-tenant relationship? Is that what it is?
Legally speaking, it is. Yeah. But it really becomes much more like family.
Okay.
And with that comes a lot of responsibility.
I've actually visited your facility, and it seems to me that you've sort of tried to create a very homey environment. I'm assuming that was intentional.
Most definitely.
Okay. All right.
We wanted to be as different from what a nursing home could be,
right,
and as close to what the features, functions, and capabilities of what someone is used to at home.
It's not easy for someone to leave their home, and especially if they're older, I'm talking 70 and above. It's just not easy to do. People prefer staying at home as long as possible.
Current demographic trends do show that, there will be an increased need for home care, and a lot of people are considering even multi-generational housing. But yes, the desire to stay at home is quite prevalent.
Right. Now, with regard to assisted living, unlike, let's say, independent living, there's no advance money that's paid, right? You just pay monthly as you go along. Is that how that works?
Correct. There's usually a entrance fee.
Okay.
Some communities will charge a security deposit or last month's rent.
Okay.
But typically, you're just talking about the prorated rent when the person moves in.
Sure.
Sometimes there are additional services such as medication management, laundry, and continence management. And then some communities even have levels of care that are additional beyond that.
Okay.
Each provider is slightly different.
Just speaking specifically about your facility, Methuen Village, do you have like what I would refer to as a menu of services that the resident can select from?
At our community, all of the care is included in the rent that's paid. We do charge additional for medication management, laundry, and continence management, but that's on an as-needed basis.
I see.
And when someone moves in, if we're uncertain if they truly need it, we'd offer that service complimentary.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier that one of the issues, of course, is how someone's going to pay for assisted living. What are the different payment resources that are available to pay for assisted living?
Well, the first and probably most popular one is the Veterans Aid and Attendance Benefit. This is a federally funded benefit for any assisted living home in America. That typically includes the spouse of the veteran themselves. If the veteran has passed away, the spouse is still eligible.
Correct.
Beyond the veterans benefit, what we typically see for candidates for assisted living would be that they have Social Security, they have typically a pension, maybe another alternate source of income, along with probably the ownership of a house or another asset, and then perhaps some annuities or trusts or other funds. When we take a look at their entire financial structure, we look at the cost of assisted living, we can say on day one, what's the sustainable future for that option in assisted living? Certainly down the road, if a nursing home is a concern, and typically nursing homes are twice the cost of assisted living, you can say, okay, if I have enough funds for 5 years, would I need a nursing home in 3 years? At which point am I eligible for either or?
Sure.
And of course, long term, planning ahead for those events is priority.
Sure, of course it is. Just so that our viewers are very clear here, long-term care insurance, does that pay for assisted living?
It usually does.
It usually does, okay.
It's most important for anyone who has certainly had a long-term care insurance policy to discover those answers ahead of time.
Sure.
So it's very important to also consider, is that benefit going to increase over time with inflation? What's the maximum for that benefit? But definitely long-term care insurance is a great way to help pay for assisted living.
Okay. Private health insurance does not pay for assisted living.
Correct.
Okay.
And in most, it depends on the community and the state you're in, but most communities don't accept Medicare or Medicaid as forms of payment. Most properties are privately run, or some may even have some low-income participation with different HUD programs. So it's important for the client to really understand which property they're touring and what options are available.
Right. And understand whether or not they have any payment resources available to them. I'm glad you brought up the Veterans Aid and Attendance, because that's a very important benefit for veterans. It's amazing to me how many veterans are not aware that this benefit exists.
It's an excellent benefit for them to have, absolutely.
It is. Does the assisted living facility provide them with any sort of transportation so they can go visit their doctor or go to the pharmacy or maybe go to a local senior center? Is that available to them through the assisted living facility?
Yes, it is. Our assisted living community has transportation available. If for some reason it was double booked, we would make it happen. We may hire another service to provide that. But anything we sponsor, we would provide transportation to. We're in the whatever it takes business.
Okay, all right. And what's the average length of stay for someone who stays in an assisted living facility? Are we talking a year, 5 years, 10 years? What's the average stay?
Typically about 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
But we've seen variations of just a couple months up to 5 or 10 years.
I see. And what happens with somebody who's in assisted living and they have a sudden decline in their health and the level of assistance that's being provided to the resident is no longer sufficient? What options do they have?
Assuming you've exhausted the participation with the VNA, hospice, palliative care, additional services, even the interaction with the doctor. If all those attempts have been made, you'd probably be talking a different setting.
I see.
Probably a nursing home, perhaps even a hospice house.
Does your facility have any rules and regulations with regards to what the resident can in fact do, record keeping, that sort of thing?
Yeah, obviously we follow all the state, local, and federal laws, but the resident is really empowered to make their apartment home. Okay. We obviously look out for any fire safety concerns. There may be some behavioral concerns that come up that arise due to dementia or other issues, but typically the residents are allowed to express themselves just like they're at home.
Okay, so can they have a pet? Can they smoke? I mean, or
as long as the pet's appropriate, they can smoke outside.
Really? Okay.
It's always for us about making that a yes answer.
All right.
But how do we do it safely?
I see.
Of course, we don't encourage people blasting their music late at night. That's still an issue. Although we have put extra insulation in the walls.
Okay. Right. Well, I mean, these are issues that people need to know about.
We always hear people say, when am I allowed to visit?
Right.
Well, there's no time you can't visit.
Right.
We want people to visit late at night, early in the morning. We might even invite them to come and have a meal with us, have lunch, have dinner with mom or dad. So, just come down and enjoy our restaurant for the day. Right. Come down and experience what we have to offer. No obligation, just until you know what it is, right. You have no idea. If
somebody has agreed to stay at your facility, what's the process like in terms of, I'm sure there's paperwork that has to be completed, information you have to be given. What sort of information do you require?
Well, we would first start with the family filling an application and putting a deposit. That would just say that they're committed to the process. Beyond that, we would have them fill out the residency agreement, disclosure, and consumer guide by the state of Massachusetts. After that, we would conduct the assessment, make sure that the care plan is in order for the resident. We'd collect the healthcare proxy, do not resuscitate order if that's in play, powers of attorney, all the legal documents like that. And then meet with the family, review the entire care plan, and then beyond that, internally we would set up assignments by shift so that care is provided to that resident. So that's the initial upfront process.
It's a good place for us to stop.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben.
You're welcome.
Today we navigated the world of assisted living. We learned that as Americans live increasingly longer lives, many require ongoing assistance due to declining health. This care often falls to grown children and are busy with careers and or families of their own. We learned that as people age, they are less able to independently care for themselves. The purpose of assisted living is to aid and facilitate activities of daily living. We also learned of the different payment sources for assisted living, such as self-pay and long-term care insurance. Also remember to ask what, if any, estate and financial planning has been accomplished. Advanced planning may simplify the decision-making process. Remember that planning for age-related infirmities earlier rather than later is the most prudent course of action. Such advanced planning likely will assure peace of mind that your loved one will receive proper care while protecting assets. Educate yourself to become more aware about the services offered by assisted living facilities and their associated costs. For as Ben Franklin is quoted as saying, an investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. In closing, thanks to my guest Ben Boulter of Methuen Village for participating in this program, and as always, thank you to you, our viewers, for watching Your Money, Your Life. My name is Attorney Ramsey Bahrawy, Building Your Trust.